Hi everyone. Today I'll be talking about my personal reflection on the ethical decision-making roleplay involving CT Confectionery and BUB Health Snacks Limited. In this roleplay, my role was an investigator. I had to assess the situation objectively, consider the evidence, and reflect on the ethical and legal responsibility involved. My reflection focused on ethical reasoning, stakeholder impact, legal accountability, and cultural awareness. The core recommendation and support was that BUB Snack Limited should require CT Confectionery to demonstrate transparency, accountability, and corrective action before continuing the business relation. So here we have the summarized perspective of the CT executive team. As the investigator, my focus was on evidence review, accountability, and stakeholder impact. I had to question unclear information and avoid making assumptions too quickly. The CEO perspective focused on reputation, trust, and responsible leadership. This was important because the decision could affect the company's credibility. And the CFO perspective considered their financial loss, penalties, and internal controls. The CSO perspective focused more on sustainability, social responsibility, and stakeholder trust. This has helped the group for consider long-term impact, not only short-term business outcomes. Together, all these perspectives show that ethical decisions involve competing priorities rather than different professional responsibilities. And more on my part on investigator, I approach the issue through an objective and evidence-based perspective. I examine the available information carefully before forming a judgment. And I also try to separate confirmed facts from assumptions so that my recommendation will not be based on personal bias or incomplete information. Another important part of my role was considering responsibility. I questioned whether CD Confectionary's action were fair, defensible, and aligned with their expected business conducts. I also consider whether Bilby have received enough accurate information to make an informed decision and also whether if transparency communication practice had been maintained in Bilby Health Snacks. Overall, my role encouraged me to think beyond commercial convenience and consider whether the decision could be justified ethically and legally. At the beginning of the roleplay, I focused mainly on practical concerns such as reputation, business risk, and partnership consequences. However, as the discussion continued, I became more aware of the ethical and legal dimension of the issue. I realized that the problem was not only about protecting the business relationship, but also about transparency, responsibility, and trust. The different role perspectives shaped my understanding. The CEO view highlighted reputation and leadership responsibility, while the CFO view showed how ethical problems can create financial risk. The CSO review reminded the group that sustainability and stakeholder trust should also be considered. And next up, ethical and legal perspective. In analyzing the roleplay, I considered both legal and ethical perspectives. Stakeholder theory was very important because the decision should consider all affected groups, including BUB, CT, customers, employees, suppliers, and the wider community. Utilitarian reasoning was useful because the preferred action should reduce long-term harm and protect stakeholder welfare. Due diligence and disclosure were also important because BUB should verify CD Confectionary's explanation and corrective action before continuing the partnership. Corporate governance will stand as stronger internal controls, oversight, and reporting system can help prevent future ethical or legal failures. And next up for my recommendation is that BUB Health Snack should proceed cautiously and require CT Confectionery to demonstrate their transparency, accountability, and corrective action before continuing the partnership. This means that BUB should not immediately end the business relationship, but it should also not continue as usual without any conditions. First, CT should provide a clear explanation of the ethical issue and its cause. Second, BUB should also request evidence of corrective action and compliance improvements. The CT should conduct an internal ethical and legal compliance review. Staff should also receive training on reporting obligations, ethical conduct, and accountability. Finally, BUB should monitor CT's future performance before restoring full confidence in the partnership. And I believe this recommendation is balanced because it protects stakeholder while also giving CT Confectionery an opportunity to correct its behavior. Next up, for the cultural awareness and bias. The roleplay has also helped me reflect on cultural awareness and some personal bias. I recognize that I was cautious about directly challenging others in their discussion. This may reflect cultural values such as harmony, respect, or authority, and to avoid confrontation. However, the roleplay showed me that ethical decision-making sometimes requires some respectful disagreements. And if there's an ethical concern, avoid conflict may allow the problem to continue. I also learned that different roles and cultural assumptions can influence how people understand responsibility and accountability. Empathy is very important because people may face pressure in their roles, but empathy should not be used to excuse unethical behavior. In future, I need to be more willing to speak up respectfully while ethical concerns arise. And overall, what I learned about myself through this roleplay is first, I tend to notice practical business consequences early, such as reputation, financial risk, and partnership impact. This is useful, but I should not allow practical concerns to overshadow ethical responsibility. Second, I may hesitate to challenge others directly because I prefer harmony and respectful communication. However, the roleplay showed me that silence can unintentional allow poor conduct to continue. Third, I learned that I need to ask deeper ethical and legal questions before forming a judgment, such as who may be harmed, whether the information is complete, and whether the decision can be justified publicly. I also learned that with enough evidence, it builds confidence. When I use facts and clear reasoning, I felt more confident supporting my ethical recommendation. My key realization is that ethical leadership requires courage, self-awareness, empathy, and structured reasoning. For future self, my ethical approach role, in my graduate role, this experience will influence how I approach the ethical decision-making process. I will try to identify ethical issues early instead of treating them as only operational problems. I will also consider stakeholder before making or supporting a recommendation. I will reflect on my own cultural assumptions and personal biases, especially my tendency to avoid direct disagreement. When I am uncertain, I will seek guidance from policies, supervisors, ethical framework, or legal standards. Most importantly, I will speak up respectfully using facts and evidence. I do not need to be aggressive to raise a concern. However, I can still communicate professionally while still being clear about ethical risk. Overall, I want my future decisions to be practical, principled, and legally defensible. In conclusion, the roleplay has shown me that ethical decision making is complex and influenced by organizational roles, personal values, and cultural assumptions. The investigator, CEO, CFO, and CSO perspective had helped me understand the issue from different viewpoints. My recommendation focuses on transparency, accountability, and corrective action because this protects stakeholders while allowing CT an opportunity to improve. This experience taught me that ethical decision making requires courage, structure, evidence, empathy, and responsibility. In future, I will aim to make these decisions that are both practical and principled. Thank you.